Hi guys, welcome back. We know that there are data structures like hash map, B tree, and etc. to organize the data in a way to make the search lookups faster. But what if our data has a location? How do you organize the geographic data? How do you organize the entire city or even the entire world? This is where the spatial indexing comes in. So instead of organizing the data, spatial indexing organize the geographical space. It partitioned the space or a map into smaller regions so that nearby lookups are much faster and efficient. There are many techniques, or you can say there are many ways to implement the spatial indexing. In this video, we will talk about fixed grid, adaptive grid, and hexagonal grid. Okay, so let's see how each technique works. So, before looking into each technique, let's first think about what if there is no spatial indexing. Okay, here on the screen you can see a map. Okay, the map has coffee shops, location of the coffee shops. Okay, and there is a user who wants to search a nearby coffee shop. Okay, but consider there is no spatial indexing. So what we need to do is we need to compare the user location with every coffee shop. So let's suppose the user is here. So here the user location is compared with every coffee shop and it returned the nearby coffee shop. Okay, yeah, so here there is no spatial indexing. The results are accurate because we are comparing every coffee shop and you will get the accurate results. Okay, it will work, but there is a cost. What if there are more and more and more coffee shops, and to find the nearest coffee shop to the user's location will become more expensive and it will take a lot of time. So here the complexity is ON because you have to compare user's location with every coffee shop location. Okay, now let's talk about our first technique to implement the spatial indexing, which is the fixed grid. Okay, let's see that. So in a fixed grid, here the map is divided into equal sized cells. You can see here there are horizontal lines and there are vertical lines. So the map is divided into equal cells. Okay, now each coffee shop belongs to it belongs to its own cell. So for example, this coffee shop belongs to this cell. Okay, and this coffee shop belongs to this cell. Okay, now if we want to search the nearby coffee shop to the user's location, first what we need to do is we need to find the adjacent cells to the user's location and we will only search the nearby coffee shop in that cells. So for example, let's suppose the user is here. I'm just changing the location to here. Okay, now you see this is the user location and the cells adjacent to the user location are these ones: 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 and its own cell. So there are 9 cells. Now we are just searching for these 9 cells to find the nearest coffee shop to the user's location. Okay, see now here. Now by this indexing, now we implemented the spatial indexing here. Okay, so map is divided into fixed size cells, so in a grids. Okay, so and here the user is trying to search for a nearby coffee shop, and you see here we only search the adjacent cells. Okay, we are not looking into all other coffee shops, so it reduced a lot of work to find the nearest shop. Okay, so now this technique, okay, is like using the fixed grid is a technique used by a geohash. Okay, this approach is called the geohashing. Okay, where your map is divided into equal size grids. Okay, but in this grid size, so you may see already this grid has more coffee shops than this grid, and I believe this grid has less number of coffee shops than the other grids. Okay, but you have to search the each grid. Okay, so now can we like further divide this grid into smaller grids? Okay, so yes, so that approach is the adaptive grid. So let's talk about now the adaptive grid. So you see here also in the adaptive grid also map is divided into cells or grids, but here the grids are divided into further cells, but only the grids which has a large number of coffee shops are divided into smaller cells. But if a cell has less number of coffee shops, it is not divided, it remains the same. So for example, here you see this cell has less number of coffee shops, it is not divided, but this whole complete cell has large number of coffee shops, so it is divided into further 4 cells. And here if you see at the center of this map, you can see a very small grids. So basically because there are a lot of coffee shops, so each cell is divided into further cells. Okay, so this is called the adaptive grid, and adaptive grid technique is called the Quadtree. So this is called the Quadtree. Okay, so let's see here, like now that let's suppose a user is here and we want to search the nearby shops to coffee shop to the user location. So user is here. Okay, so see here every cell is same. Okay, but if I come to this shop here, like so this shop here, yeah, see here, so these are the, here you can see a smaller cells, so cells are divided into further smaller cells so that the search becomes much faster and accurate. So in this adaptive grid approach, it depends on the data. Okay, so if a cell has more data, it is further divided into smaller cells, but if there is less data, it remains the same. Okay, now there is another approach, the hexagonal grid. So let's talk about that. So in the hexagonal grid, what happens is that the map is divided into a hexagonal grid space shape, instead of the squares. So here, but if I want to search the coffee shops here, so you see here, okay, the map is divided into hexagonal shape. Okay, so this is called the H3, an open source spatial indexing. It is developed by the Uber. Okay, it has some improvements over the fixed grid. Okay, basically in the fixed grid, what happens is that the distance from the center of this location to each cell is not equal. You see the adjacent cells, let's keep this location first of all. Yeah, this one. Okay, this cell, this cell, this cell, this cell, these are the adjacent cell to this cell where the user's location is. They are nearby to the corner cells. So if you see here, the corner cells are a little bit far away from this center cell. Okay, but in the hexagonal grid, what happens is that every cell is at a equal distance. So because of this equal distance, the nearby search lookup is much accurate, I would say. So that's why Uber developed this H3 spatial indexing system. Okay. So now let's compare the one by one all the approaches. So here in the search everything we didn't have any spatial indexing, so we have to compare each coffee shop with the user location. But in the fixed grid, adaptive grid and hexagonal grid, we don't have to compare each coffee shop. Only the nearby coffee shops are compared. We first find the adjacent cells, and the user's location is compared with the coffee shops which are in these adjacent cells, so that the nearby lookup becomes much faster. We don't have to search the all coffee shops in an area, in a city, or in a world or something. Okay, so this is what the spatial indexing is. Okay, the idea of the spatial indexing is reduce the space to make the search calculations faster. Okay, remember this point. Spatial indexing is not about making each distance check faster. It is about skipping the checks that you don't need at all. So by implementing the spatial indexing here, okay, we ignored the coffee shops which are not needed at all. We only compared with the ones which are in the adjacent cells. So this is what the spatial indexing is. Okay, so now the question is like which technique you should use. Okay, so I would say like every technique works well. So it depends on your application requirement. I'm not saying like hexagonal is the best approach and you should use the hexagon over adaptive, and you should use adaptive over fixed grid. I'm not saying this thing. So choosing the technique depends on your application requirement. So basically like Uber created his own spatial indexing, hexagonal grid, because they want to have a search more accurate, so they developed it. Okay, this was their application's need. Okay, so according to your application need, you can choose any technique. So yeah, that's it guys. It is about so this is what about the spatial indexing. Okay, I hope you understood what exactly is spatial indexing, so why we need it, what is the benefit of having this spatial indexing. Okay, so in this video we discussed few techniques in which we can implement the spatial indexing, like the fixed grid, adaptive grid and hexagonal grid. Okay, so thank you guys, thank you for watching. If you want to see, if you want to learn more such topics, please subscribe for the channel for more such videos. Okay, and thank you for watching this video. I will see you in the next one. Thank you guys, thank you so much.